Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Forum 2024. It is always a pleasure to see everyone here. Thank you for joining us. The programming in this room is running about 30 minutes late, just so that everyone can sort of adjust their schedules. But we will be running this panel for probably about 50 minutes. We'll chit-chat for 30-ish, and then like to leave some room for questions. My name is Carla Gericke. I'm the president emeritus of the Free State Project and the chair lady of the board of the Free State. I also serve as acting president at the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. I also serve on Right to Know New Hampshire and a bunch of other things, but we will keep on topic. It is my great pleasure to introduce many different minds thinking about independence in New Hampshire in many slightly different ways. And I think that's a really important note to understand, is that the liberty movement in New Hampshire is now so large that we have factional ideas in the realm of something as simple as creating our own little country. For those of you who know me, I am single-handedly, one queen at a time, building my own monarchy. I will be selling titles at the end of this speech. More seriously, of course, is that I think for many of us in this room, we are intrigued by the idea of how can we create the reality we want to see. So in some ways it seems ludicrous to say, could we build our own country? But on the other hand, I think a lot of what we see in society right now is quite frankly ludicrous. And I think that thinking people should absolutely be trying to think about how we can build the better future that we want to see. And these are the thought leaders helping us make that happen. So on my far right, we have Canadian Matt, as I call him. Please say your last name.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Sabourin de Choinière. I'm actually a Free Stater from New York. I moved to New Hampshire back in 2021, so that's actually where I'm from, but I have quite the French-Canadian sounding last name. I'm the chairman of the New Hampshire Independence Political Action Committee. We support legislators and legislation for New Hampshire independence. We actually got one of our legislators up here today with us.
Wonderful. And then in the middle, we have Steve Villee, who wears many hats, including he is treasurer of the Free State Project. He is actually one of those unsung heroes that we have in the movement, the people behind the scenes who make everything tick and talk. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your project.
Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm also the founder of the Club 75 Alliance, which is a very, very different kind of secession movement. Two main things. First, I am absolutely not interested in a unilateral secession where we say, hey, we're declaring independence, and this messaging of, hey, federal government, we want to secede because you're broken, because you're evil, and we dare you to send in the troops. Yuck. No, thank you. That's a recipe for civil war. I'm not interested in that. I want to maintain good relations with the United States, similar to the good relations that Monaco has with France, and that means a negotiated peaceful secession, which probably means a United States constitutional amendment, but there are other options, but one way or another we're going to have to make the case for secession, which means mastering the art of persuasion, which I know libertarians aren't generally very good at. So for more information, please visit club75alliance.com. I actually have a couple of copies of my book out there in the other room.
Yes, and actually Steve and the club are one of our sponsors, so please do visit the table on the outside, and the NH Independence Pack is in the exhibitors hall, so feel free to stop by there and give us your names. And then last but not least, we have Representative Jason Gerhard. Jason?
All right, thank you. So, this sounds, okay. All right, I do. So I actually hail from the Isle of Long Island, New York. I kind of took a surreptitious route to New Hampshire, a little bit of 12 and a half years in federal prison. So January of 2020, I came to New Hampshire after getting out a little bit early on appeal. It was an income tax case, all right. It was So I just don't like the federal government. I think they're corrupt beyond repair. I don't think there could ever be a negotiated settlement with people that corrupt. And I wouldn't believe them if they signed a document, honestly. So my whole thing, I think, would be the solution is more civil disobedience oriented. Henry David Thoreau, read Civil Disobedience, very short. Saying no is the most powerful thing we can do. And I don't really know what we were supposed to say up here. But yeah, so anyway, I'm state rep.
I'll ask questions.
Okay. And I'm just for the record, and if anybody has some deep pockets, I'm not running for re-election for state representative. I'm going to run for county sheriff of Merrimack County, which encompasses the state capital of Concord, which means we can cordon off the federal building in Concord. So yes, all right, thank you.
This panel to me feels like one of those only in New Hampshire moments, right? Like we just have the coolest people who serve serve up at the State House and who have fascinating backstories, but also to Jason's point, he made light of it, but he was a tax. What's the word?
No, I supported an elderly couple that was in a standoff with the federal government. They lasted like 10 months. Go New Hampshire.
And that was Ed and Elaine Brown for people who followed that story. But I think the more important part of that is they were actually just anti-war and didn't want their money to go to war, said they weren't going to pay. Of course, the government that only understands fear and violence had to respond to that. And someone like Jason had to spend 12 years in jail. So that to me seems like a pretty good reason to try and make your own country. So for folks who don't know, there was this NBC series that came out last year. It's called Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of New Hampshire. If you have not seen that series, I would highly recommend you watch it. There are also two, I think, episodes on secession and on the independence movement there. So for folks who are watching this later, please go watch that. It's available on YouTube and it is available on NBC as well. So by way of background, I think maybe we could talk about the first sort of bite at the apple was a couple of years ago when we introduced CACR 32. So who feels comfortable to talk a little bit about the background of that bill?
I could shed a little bit about that. So this was before the PAC was created, but it was still very exciting. So March of 2022, Mike Sylvia was the prime sponsor. We had several reps sponsor a piece of legislation, a constitutional amendment concurrent resolution for New Hampshire to secede from the United States of America. It was the first time any state body had voted on any sort of secession bill in I don't know how long. We had 13 state reps in the House at the time vote to not stop it from being stopped by the majority of the House. Naturally, most of the House was not for it, but we had 13 reps vote for it, one for each of the 13 colonies, which I thought was kind of cool. And so a few months later, I see the call from one of the reps with the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, like who's going to start a PAC? And I'm like, that's what I came here for New Hampshire to do. So we're a state registered political committee now. There was a challenge to our independence reps. So in 2022, the fall of 2022, before the primary election, someone brought a lawsuit of sorts to try and get our pro-independence reps off the ballot. They wanted Glenn and Mike and a few of the other guys taken off, ineligible to run for simply having voted for independence. And it was a whole bunch of bad information on their part. And so we organized a counter-protest that day at the Ballot Law Commission hearing, and we won that day at the hearing 5-0. Representative Matt Sanandastasso came and he testified in support of that. It was a great showing. We had an entire rally with as many people in this room on 3 days' notice, and we won that day. And since then, we haven't had any issues with getting folks elected into office or even submitting legislation. This past spring, we had CACR 20, which it turned out to not be a roll call vote.
Matt, just a second,
okay, yes,
just
fine.
by way of
Yep,
background. So the original language of CR 32 was it's a very short two sentences basically. And a CACR is a constitutional amendment, which would mean that we would have to have a constitutional amendment to the New Hampshire Constitution, which means that in the state house, I believe it's 60%, and to the voters, it's 67% would have to agree with it. And the original language of that bill was just, we're going to put it to the voters as a constitutional amendment, and if it passes, New Hampshire will peaceably secede from the Union and go their own way as a sovereign nation. So it was very short, understandable, quite graspable. I think if those words actually appeared on a ballot, people would be surprised how many more people support it than the establishment and the elite want to believe. So to Matt's point, that one kind of went down in flames. So in New Hampshire, just for the newbies, our state house is the third largest legislative body in the English-speaking world. We have 400 state reps. They represent about 3.3 thousand people. So you know your state rep. You probably have his number in your cell phone, and if you don't, you should make sure you do. And whenever you're feeling annoyed, give them a call and let them know what's up, right? Because that's why we're here. We want that relationship with our government if we're going to have government. And so we got a lot of criticism for those 13 people who voted for it. So then smart people decided they were going to take a different approach. So Jason, maybe you can talk about the next one we introduced this session.
So, like most things, at least in my life, it was kind of haphazard. I get a call from Ian Freeman, who is behind the first secession bill, who's kind of a New Hampshire legend, and unfortunately serving some time in federal prison right now for the crime of selling Bitcoin. And he calls me and said that the person he had hoped would sponsor the new secession bill, because you have a deadline. You have to have bills in by X date, or they can't be submitted for the secession. So anyway, he said the guy who was going to do it couldn't do it or wouldn't do it. Can I throw one in? The same secession bill. But my idea was, the original one was just secession point blank, but I think tying it to the national debt is a critical factor. So I made it that New Hampshire would secede at the national debt, $40 trillion. Now, I understand the national debt's all fake. When you include entitlements, it's 200 zillion or whatever. It's all numbers. But at least to the public consumption, the 40 trillion is realistic and soon to happen. Because I forget what it is. Every 90 days we're putting a trillion on, or I don't know what it is. So, so anyway, I put it in. I think I made the deadline by like 10 hours or something. It was one of those kind of things. So it went in, and it actually had fairly decent support, but it wasn't as revolutionary as the first time it went around. The committee hearing on it had some people show up, but there weren't the accusations that we were traitors, and the lefties didn't really get wound up about it, which is a good sign, but it's also unfortunate because it doesn't have that same kind of energy behind it. So I totally forgot what the original question was, but yeah, it went through, and
so it was very similar language attached to this budgetary number, right?
Well, the exact
we originally, when we introduced it, we thought, we're probably buying 2 or 3 years, but for people who understand compound interest, when you print, $6 trillion in a year, the money, the amount of debt that we're accumulating now, it really is $1 trillion between every 60 to 90 days. I saw the most terrifying chart a couple of days ago, and it's on my Twitter. So they tabled that, or it's been voted indefinite.
Yeah, I believe it was. I forget. There's so many bills.
But
yeah, either way, they killed it. They wouldn't even let us debate it.
So the other bill, of course, that was introduced was HB 1130, if I'm remembering right.
That's correct, yes.
And this one, Matt or Steve, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I can talk about that one because I actually testified in favor. It was a bill to establish a study commission to evaluate the possibility, just basically talk about secession, what it would imply, what it would mean, what are the practical ramifications. And so I testified on that and said, we need to talk about this. There's all kinds of options. And I mentioned the Club 75 Alliance. Anyway, It was my first time testifying on any bill ever. So
And you did a great job. And that is, of course, also one of the reasons to be here in New Hampshire is that we do have this open and accessible legislature where every bill gets a hearing. So like if you have your bee in a bonnet about something, you can go there and you can use momentum and the momentum of our community to influence things. That bill kind of put together a commission that would be, first of all, I should say it was in direct response to the criticisms we were getting, right? So people were saying things like, you're nuts, that's radical, you extremists, how dare you, how could this work, how would this work, what are you doing, oh, I'm so scared, right? These are actually legitimate concerns. Like we forget how radical in a positive sense the way we think is, because we think outside the box and we're solution-driven people who want to come up with something better than whatever we're currently experiencing, right? So for the naysayers, some of them are like persuadable to the point of if we can get our messaging on point. And so they were like, this sounds scary. Like if you're on a fixed income and you're a retiree, you're like, what would happen if New Hampshire was an independent country? And there's a very simple answer. People get their Social Security checks in Mexico, which is a foreign country. We have actually already solved some of these problems, but when people stare at something new, they go, this is terrifying, I don't want to do this. Am I going to have a passport to cross between, Manchester and Maine, for example, right? So the desire with that bill was to really try and meet our critics where they were and to start to have the hard conversations. Let's talk a little bit about polls that we have seen come out of our efforts so far. So maybe Matt, if you want to start, you were mentioning one I hadn't heard of before, so maybe start there.
So if you were listening to Tim Pool this week, he had a whole segment on one of his shows about secession. There was a new article that came out, and I think it was the Independent over in the UK about what American adults feel about secession. And supposedly 25% of American adults are ready to see their state become their own country. And what was really interesting about that is just it's never the state that's making the news that's always leading the charge or might be where the most demand is as it turns out, Alaska is actually the state where there's the most demand for it to be its own country. They're up to 36% of adults in that state actually would like to see it, which is actually incredible to think. Texas, of course, is making the news right now with the situation that was at the border last month.
Yeah.
But it looks like that we were able to work, exercise our state sovereignty to send all of our different states' National Guards down to help nullify the federal government's impeding of Texas enforcing their own state border. New Hampshire, on this latest poll with YouGov, it came in at 15% support of secession, which matches last year's poll with the Granite State poll. Last year it came out saying, actually, the Granite State poll last year said 16% is ready to secede, 20% support a vote. So this poll matches it perfectly with that. But what I'm most excited about was seeing how our neighbor next door, Maine, is actually beating us with support for secession by 19%. So why aren't they having panels like this? They're just not aware of themselves yet. So we're actually a little bit ahead of the game.
Well, no, we're not. We just hired Eric Brakey, a three-term senator from Maine, as the executive director of the Free State Project. Woo. And I saw it with my own eyes. I'm pretty sure it was AI generated. I'm not sure if he's going to put it in as a serious bill, but I did see at least a joke bill that will propose that the CD2 in Maine secede to New Hampshire. So I don't know if that's just going to be a press story or not, but these are the ways that you get the stuff in the news. And we should give a shout out to Ian Freeman, who has actually been, even from prison, I talked to him the other day, spearheading some of this stuff and trying to keep momentum going. And he's been paying for a PR firm that has been helping us. It's sort of dual between New Hampshire and Texas to get news. We have had Newsweek cover stories where we are accurately quoted. That was new for me. And so there is truly momentum for this, and so seizing those opportunities as the conversation happens is really important. I would like to see us encourage a secession conference in Hawaii in February, so that we can all go there. But of course, Hawaii, probably from a just purely historical perspective of how secession would work, has the strongest argument for the following reasons. First of all, it's an island nation. It was a monarchy that got thrown over by corporate interests, including the Dole Corporation, who was acting on the behest of the American government. Dole, as in someone who was either a Veep or a president. I forget, I wasn't born here, but I remember that name not fondly. And they have a unique language. They have unique traditions. So I do think we shouldn't forget someone like our brethren in Hawaii to say, there is real overlap here. We do have Tulsi Gabbard, who is Hawaiian, who will be here tomorrow to do her keynote. These things aren't necessarily as accidental as people think. So keep that in mind as well. I know that there were polls that we've done in the past. I believe there were informal polls where we've gotten up to 42% of respondents on the poll have been in support. This was around the time when Brexit was really hot. But we have seen a lot of new interest in this topic as people become extremely disillusioned with the federal government. We have slightly different approaches. So Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot here just a little bit, because I do think if we're going to talk about persuasion, we also have to represent all sides fairly. Yeah. I am not, by my very nature, I'm thumbing my nose at the federal government, but I am very mindful that our movement and the secession and independence movement in New Hampshire is a peaceful movement. We can because, the Boers did it, and Afghanistan did it, but let's not do it. So the note forward always has to be, we want peace. We want to do this in a cogent way. I don't want to thumb the nose at the federal government because, our friends, many of them are in jail or have been jailed or arrested. We know that is a real threat. So we want to find that balance of saying, these are the things we want, but for me at least, my message forward is I would like this to be peaceful. So I'm just calling you out on that. Can you elaborate a little bit, because your structure and your club and the manifesto and the book is available, actually is sort of around like a tax structure, right? Yes. And more a financial thing. So let people know about that.
Okay, so my proposal for secession, the specific reason we want secession is to be free of federal income tax. That's a very concrete thing. See, here's the thing. We're libertarians, we're in the minority. If we try to, how to put it, Republicans may have trouble understanding why we like weed so much. Democrats may have trouble understanding why we love guns so much. But everybody can understand the desire to save money. So that's why I've chosen that one issue as something everyone can understand, why saving money is such a fundamental thing. And it's quite provable that at least those of us with income of $75,000 or more, and even those below that, would be saving quite a bit of money if we could be free of federal income tax. So that's why I'm pushing that one issue.
Okay, thank you. Another approach that we're looking at is nullification. And Jason, I believe you introduced or were involved in at least several sort of, let's nullify some DC, the permanent state, the deep state, whatever we want to call it. Can we nullify bills and nullify things as an approach to get, if not on paper independence, actual pragmatic independence? And the best example for that, of course, over the years has been cannabis reform, because the states at some stage, everyone was just like, okay, the feds are retarded, and we're all just going to do something else. And each one of the states just slowly did it until there was a majority of states. And, you know, and then secret memos and stuff went out to like the TSA to be like, stop searching people for weed, because we kind of lost that, right? You won't hear that. That won't be a, you know, headline, but there are pragmatic results to certain things. So there were a bunch of cool bills. I couldn't keep up with all of them. I believe there was one for the WHO. Tell us a little bit more about the nullification efforts.
Oh, well, I wasn't involved in the one against the World Health Organization to nullify all their acts in New Hampshire. I mean, I supported the concept, but let's back up a little. I don't think the answer is asking a bunch. Okay, let's reestablish this. You get $100 a year in the State House in New Hampshire. Senators get $125 a year. So naturally, the average age skews older. The retiree community is kind of running the show in there. And I don't think you're really going to get that community too supportive of a lot of the things that we want, simply because it's scary to them. The Social Security question is kind of the biggest thing. What's going to happen to my Social Security? So point being is, I think individual secession is important. So that's why it's most important just to say no at the most individual level, which I agree with you on the income tax issue, but I'm of the opinion that the actual income tax doesn't apply to anyone who doesn't exercise a federal privilege. And I think each individual person can exercise their own sovereignty on that issue. And I got some stuff if anybody wants it. But that's something that I'm going to be pursuing in various ways. And just give me 1 second, because this actually kind of ties something. The way I actually won my local election, well, a lot of prayer, but in 2020, I get out of prison, just real quickly. Then in June of that year, I moved to where I'm now in Northfield. They had a town election coming up for selectmen. So in New Hampshire, small towns, they have 3 selectmen, or 5, it doesn't matter. No one really goes to vote. And the election was coming up in March. I was like, you know what? I'm doing a little bit of research. I find out that you need 25 registered voters to put a petitioned warrant article on the town warrant. The town warrant in New Hampshire is like, warrant article 1 will be, it's actually tomorrow in Northfield, but the warrant article will be, you want to spend $30,000 on a cop car. So 50, 60 people in the school cafeteria go, yay, nay, all right, somebody will debate it, say, why are we spending this? Why can't we fix up the other junker? Okay, so you can actually put anything you want on there. You can require the selectmen to do whatever. So my thing was, ask the IRS 3 specific questions. And what is the definition of income? You know, why have people, the IRS commissioner said it's voluntary, and is the average American who doesn't exercise a federal privilege liable for this tax? So I knock on doors, freeze my hands off because it's January, February. Okay, I get it on there. It gets shot down at town meeting. But one of the representatives in Northfield goes, this is an issue for Concord, and that's why it got shot down. So I was like, okay, I'm running on that. So I ran on that, and I won, because everyone hates the IRS. That's a fact. So the point being is, you can do a lot of things at the local level in New Hampshire you can't do anywhere else. 25 registered voters is not that hard to do. You can knock on doors and get a few a day, and that's if people don't want to answer the doors, which sometimes they don't. But right now, I'm going to put a resolution forth in City of Franklin. I have 2 areas. I have City of Franklin and also Northfield. It's a floterial. And I think that's what we need to start thinking about, especially if you guys are in New Hampshire. It's local actions, this idea that we're going to get a vast majority, because the concurrent resolution is 2/3 of the State House, and then you got to get 2/3 of the Senate, and then you got to get the vote. It's not going to happen that way, guys. It's not going to. We have a lot of Liberty legislators in there, yes, but $100 a year is not really a good incentive to get people to sign up for it. So I just think we need to start looking at the most smallest, basic level, towns, getting people on board, and that's how we're really going to grow the movement and the idea. So that's what I just want to say.
And that, of course, is actually at its very heart the sort of nature of the Free State Project and of the movement here, right? Like, we're trying to localize down to the most sovereign unit, which I would, you know, say is you, yourself, your body, right? And then it expands from there. So, yeah, we should not lose sight of the opportunity that New Hampshire affords us to really do, like, cool, unexpected things, and to get people elected that can actually foment the difference that we need. You said an interesting thing. You said, I don't think it'll happen at the State House. And that is perhaps true. But I think also when we're trying to persuade and we're trying to make sure that people understand where we're coming from, all of these different approaches give us a massive opportunity to talk about things, right? So there's a bill, and then people go and they look at that. One of the things we're talking about doing next is perhaps, I think we're going to push a petition question. So through NH Exit as sort of a umbrella brand, I guess, for all these different ideas, we do want to start to build that grassroots group of people who can sign a simple petition so that we have people we can reach out to, so that as we do activism at the State House or when we want some kind of call to action, we have a way to reach a large group of people. But then there are also many other ways to get involved, even writing letters to the editor, even just writing a letter to the editor asking questions. Hey, I heard about those crazy bozos who are like trying to secede. How would that even work? And then list 10 questions. What you've done then is you've planted a seed with someone that you can then follow up on and sort of expand from.
Well, I just want to say, I'm not saying that the State House actions are a waste of time entirely. It has the messaging aspect of it. I get it. But I do think each individual person needs to take some responsibility and initiative on their own, because you are more powerful than you understand. Well, some of you know it. But the point being is, it takes each individual person saying, no, I'm not going along with this nonsense anymore. That's what's going to get the ball rolling. What are they going to do? Shoot everybody? I mean, all right, they might try that in New Hampshire. But the point being is, you got to start looking at it that way, and not the idea that my local senior citizen representative is going to, charge into battle for me. They probably can't get on the horse. So just saying, just think about it like that.
A very valid point. Some of the other bills I heard about, besides the flying car one, is on the nullification front, is I believe there was CBDC, sort of a bill to ban that. That is a way to do some of this stuff. So they're creative things. So if you're in the audience and you're kind of like, man, what about this play? Would this work? We should talk. I know Titus is here from Free Cities, and I think there might be very interesting ways to start to think about how do we contractually secede? Can we create these smaller things that fall under a sort of corporate, I know Jason won't like it, but like under some kind of corporate structure, so you start to create sort of a independent person who chooses to be governed by this set of rules that is a contractual thing, right? So I think there's just so much opportunity for us to think creatively about something, as long as we know, well, we're trying to drive to this outcome that in the end gives us more peace and more prosperity, which is what, of course, freedom and free markets actually do. Before we open it up to questions, I'm sure there are things I'm forgetting to ask everyone. Is there anything burning that you feel like folks should know about the movement? Perhaps how, I guess we'll wrap up with how people can support us. But if folks have questions, I don't know that we have a microphone set up, so maybe just yell them and then I'll repeat them.
Can we just take one of these on?
If anyone here is considering running for the State House this fall, I know the filing period ends on June 14th. If you are interested in running and believe in independence or sponsoring independence-related legislation, please come see me.
And if you've lived in New Hampshire for 2 years, you can run for local office. And I would recommend everyone do it. I'm not interested enough in politics to drive this. So if someone's a nerd and they want to do it, let me know. But we should at a minimum primary every Democrat. Make them work for it. If they want a lockstep vote against us, let's make them earn it. So you can be a paper candidate. Literally all you have to do is put your name up. They'll still smoke you. It doesn't matter. It is just a tactical way to tell them, we see you too. They put us all on a list here. I don't know if everyone knows the backstory to this, but Granite State Matters, I believe, Jeannie Ditch, who used to be a state senator, I'm not sure if COVID broke her or what the story is there, but she is like, she does not like us in a way where I'm just like, lady, that's not balanced in any situation. But she researches Free Staters, and she put us all on a list. So if you are on the list and you have not gotten your I'm on the list button yet, please come get it from Porcupine Realtor out in the sponsor area. And if you are an activist who is so good that you're a ninja and they don't know about you yet, come, we have some ninja buttons too. And maybe we'll give ninja buttons to everyone who primaries a Democrat next time, and then we'll put you on the list. All right, so ask us questions. Yeah, give me a shot here.
Like at your town meetings.
Right. Yeah, right. Well, yeah, and that's actually what I was going to talk about. So Jason was talking about getting local, and you're talking about running for different things, say like state rep. But I know a number of people that ran for things like treasurer of the library, right? And like, there's all sorts of shenanigans going on in your town.
Someone just there we go. It's back. No, it's back. It's back.
Thank you, Christopher. So there's all sorts of local stuff and something I found out is I tried to get more involved with local politics, and I've started a Strong Town initiative in Manchester, and I've thought about running for mayor, is that all these cities and all these towns are really broke. They have no money. It's all printed by the feds. So every time they build a new road or anything like that, they get a federal grant to do it. And so that's something that I think people would be afraid of if they're in the city politics. I think it's something that we should be working on now so that we're more resilient. But I don't know if any of you guys have thought about the local action like this and the fact that when you say people are afraid of the Social Security, you losing their Social Security, like people that know how the local government works would be like, we can't run our school board, we can't run we can't run anything without federal grants. I was at a school board meeting. They want to do a $500 million bond to pay for new buildings and upgrades to buildings, and they're telling us it won't cost any taxpayer money. Now, this is entirely because it's grants from the federal government, from the state, grants wash through private nonprofits that are then given, but most of it's federal printed money. And so there's this fear, how will we survive without the feds?
Patrick, I can speak a little bit to the local aspect of things. I was searching on my town's website last fall, and I see that there's an opening for zoning board of adjustments. There was an alternate position opened up for it. I sent a letter of interest. I ended up pulling my letter of interest because the time and the conflicting with all of the independence bills that we ended up doing. But it's out there. Go on your town's website, grab those goodies before someone else does.
Yeah, there's committees, and a lot of us aren't even voted on there.
Some are appointed, yeah.
Some are appointed, but someone told me a story of a library.
Londonderry, yeah.
I don't know if it was Londonderry, but it was a library treasurer where no one was running for it, and they just had 2 or 3 write-ins, and the guy got it. Just had to tell 2 people, hey, just put my name down.
And apparently library trustee is where the bodies are buried. They just vote. I think someone just told me in the bathroom that their town, they just voted to double their fee. Nashua, right? Yeah. All of them. Literally 50%, 100% raise. Yeah. They doubled their salaries just like that. So you gotta watch them all the time. All right, we have another question over here, sir.
My question is for Representative Gerhard. Do you regret your decision to help the Browns in hindsight, given that it led to your decade-plus incarceration in federal prison?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how it is. No, there's something interesting that happens when you're sitting inside a little concrete closet, 7 foot by 11 foot with 2 other people. And it gives you the opportunity to really research and also just delve into a lot of exterior things, but also interiorly. I mean, I did some stuff I never would have done. Transcendental meditation, yoga, Even that sounds kind of weird, in jail, but it wasn't. And it's things that I reach back now on to deal with, situations that, I don't know how to explain it. The stress that I might have now is not as it was then. I mean, that's why I don't take a lot of this seriously. Even though, well, you're going to secede against the United States. Okay, and? I mean, it's just one of those things we have to. What else are we going to do? Write another petition? Vote harder? That's why I'm on this whole kick of stop paying them money. I don't understand how you can hold up a protest sign against the federal government with one hand and then hand them $100 bills with the other every April 15th. It's the stupidest thing possible. So we have the strength and we have the support now. We really do. It's just a matter of asserting your rights and also your voice. You need to get out there and say what you believe. Even if it's crazy, just say it. So that's probably not what you were looking for, but yeah.
And I'll add to that. My favorite meme, I just shared it this week, that I saw like 5 years ago, and it radically changed my approach to life. And it was literally two drawings. The one is gray, and the guy looks really sad, and he's kind of crying, and he's like, no one gives a shit. And then the next one is yellow, and it's like happy, and it's like, no one gives a shit. And here's the point in life. No one gives a shit. So just do what you want, own your space, own your life, and go do the things you believe in to the best of your ability. And if that's building your own country, move to New Hampshire.
One more piggyback off of that. Oh, let's applaud. Yeah, let's applaud. The situation at the federal level has only gotten worse in my lifetime, and I think that will be vindicated even more so as time goes on. With this debt secession bill that we had this year to secede, if we hit $40 trillion in debt, right now, just the ratio, debt to GDP ratio, we're at 122.29%. There's no coming back from that, guys. There's not a single person running for office who can actually honestly say they're paying off the national debt. We went around last fall, the PAC, we went asking candidates, hey, who are running for president? We asked, who was running for president? We asked Kennedy, we asked Vivek, we asked Nikki Haley, we asked, who else? Chris Christie, what they all said no. We don't, they don't have a plan. It's not gonna get better.
Next question.
Hello, my name is Robert. I can really sympathize with what you were saying about things change when you're in that cell and you think about things in a different way that you never thought you'd think about them before. And I can appreciate that. I was just reminded, saying about the debt, happy birthday to Andrew Jackson.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of appropriate that we're talking about debt today. My actual question, though, is, especially for the representatives, is how do we ensure that we're not trading in one set of chains for another? We shouldn't be talking about, oh, well, we can't pay for the schools. The government shouldn't be running the schools. So how do we make sure that we're not just trading in, the FBI for state troopers? We have the most cops per capita in the country. What good is independence if we're just going to be tyrannized by Concord instead of tyrannized by DC? Is there a plan to stop that? Or do you have ideas?
Yes, what you just said, you've concisely stated why I don't want to secede now. The things that we don't like about the federal government, or at least that I don't like, the bloated welfare state, the micromanaging our lives, the printing the money, the chronic deficit spending, those are not unique to the United States. You see them in France, Germany, UK, Canada, you name it. And that is because we libertarians are in the minority and the statists are in the majority, not just here in the United States, but everywhere. And to your point, if we seceded now, where we're what are we now, a purple state, becoming a purple country, the same thing would happen here in New Hampshire. New Hampshire would have a bloated welfare state. They would have chronic deficit spending for exactly the same reasons. Its statists are in charge. Still 90-something% of New Hampshire is still statist, and it's just what statists do. It's their nature. They can't help themselves.
But I will say on a localized level, it is different, right? Like if you are in California, you do not have your your senator on speed dial. You don't see them at the grocery store. Those people are so far removed from you. So I do think the advantage in New Hampshire is the localism, is the, hey, knocking on the doors, hey, running for sheriff, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we will ultimately, I think the cycle of life is you go from freedom, and then we trend towards tyranny, and that is just a natural cycle.
But the solution is concentrate libertarians here in New Hampshire.
Yes. Woo!
I want to say one thing to that. The statists are dangerous, but only so long as we allow them to rule over us. So they come to your house. You owe another what is it now? $20,000. I think it's even higher per student that it costs to put a kid through public education now. And they only need more. It's what, 40% competency. What do they call it? Not competency. Proficiency in my district. I think it's like 40% basically across the board. Well, Franklin's actually worse, I believe. But there's never enough money to solve the problem of what I consider teaching lies. I mean, we can go through the history of lies that we kind of told are, to the truth. So I have ideas how to fix that. But the point being is, as long as you're paying for something that you don't agree in, what do you expect? Does that make, you know what I'm saying? You're not going to get better public schools by giving them more money to teach more lies. And, so yeah, will we have a bloated, welfare state? Only if you keep paying for it. If you pay for more cops, what do you think you're going to get? More cops. So, do you understand? It comes down to you. You have to stop paying for the tyranny that's tyrannizing you.
Just to rebut that, you know very well that Ed and Elaine Brown tried to do exactly what you suggest, and look what happened to them. So,
yeah.
But I would argue that they didn't do it in the right sense because, well, we can get a little details, but the point being is, in a public position, that's how we accomplish it. And you can get elected to selectmen not very hard. And then you start pushing questions. Why are we doing this and this and this? And that's what it's going to take. I just don't think we're going to have one day we're going to vote in liberty. I don't think that's how it goes down, but that's me.
All right, I think we have time for one last question, and then we will be on schedule again, I believe.
This is less of a question, but I think people have to understand that this is one little aspect of what we're doing in New Hampshire as Free Staters. Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to get a vote here tomorrow. This is a long-term sort of situation, and the way we get that vote is by getting more people to New Hampshire, more libertarians, and we get them elected. And in time, maybe in a decade, at the rate we're currently going, maybe we'll have an actual vote, or we'll make another bit of progress. But we already jumped from, I think it was 13 to 25, something like that, in terms from the last year to this year in terms of the number of reps supporting independence. So that's a pretty big accomplishment, considering it took us, over 10 years to get just a vote, period. The only other thing I wanted to say was there are things you can do as just somebody in an audience who doesn't really have time or energy to do more. We've got T-shirts, NHASIT T-shirts, and Independence PAC T-shirts, and some other T-shirts. We also have, those are for sale, but there's also bumper stickers, Independence bumper stickers. So if you come check out the booth in the
Exhibitor hall,
yeah. There's stuff you can do. So. And
feel free to use hashtag NHExit, New Hampshire Exit. That's a good way to sort of keep branding, keep people, and it makes it searchable for the feds, but it also makes it searchable for all of us and people we can turn on to these ideas. So any last thoughts and maybe where everyone can find information on your efforts, and then we'll wrap this one up?
Yeah. NHIndependencePAC.org.
Club75alliance.com.
And www.gohardwithgerhard.com.
Thank you to our wonderful, wonderful panelists. And of course, you can find the Free State Project at fsp.org. And our next event will be Pork Fest. That's the third week in June. And then we do more of this, but with 2,000 or 3,000 more of us. See you there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.